What is going on, guys? It is David Haas here with the Rise Up Rich podcast number 14. We're moving right along. A new episode coming out every single Wednesday, so make sure you check that out. I have a very special guest today. I'm super excited because I've gotten to know this person really well. She's gone from, creating a business from scratch with a unique concept, which I think a lot of people aren't doing anymore. There's a lot of just regurgitating. Someone sees a concept and they say, "Oh, I can do that," and they just copy the concept. There's no more real true creativity out there. Well, I shouldn't say there's no real true creativity because I'm sitting across from someone that has creativity. But I'm sitting here with Jordynne Ropat, the owner of Plant Joy Donuts. If you haven't had a Plant Joy donut yet, you are like 100% missing out. Like, they're so delicious.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Also, though, they're vegan. So Jordynne, thanks for taking the time because I know you're super busy and the shop is calling you. But I think it's good for people to hear this story because it's a unique story. We did a talk together at St. Clair, and like the crowd was like captivated by everything you had to say. So so thanks for taking the time to come, and let's get right into it. Let's just talk about first of all, I wouldn't mind talking about veganism in general. You've been a vegan for a while now.
Yeah.
Where did it all come from? What inspired you to go vegan? What have you experienced? It's like, just spill it out.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you so much for that intro. Wow. I'm super excited to be here. I'm really grateful that you asked me to be on your podcast. And, I love everything you do and all of the work that you've been doing in the community to help people discover, their calling and their passion, and to show people what's possible, given what you've accomplished in your life. And you're so young. So thank you for having me here.
So you're so young. I like that you said that.
So I went vegetarian first, I want to say it was 2010. It's been a long time since I've eaten meat, but veganism for myself, was newer. So about 5 years ago now, I think it'll be 5 years in November, I decided to go vegan. So I'd been vegetarian for such a long time, and I never really thought that I could go vegan. I saw it as some unattainable, unrealistic goal of like, well, I'm vegetarian, this is pretty simple for me, but how could I ever give up cheese and eggs? How could I, make this huge switch? I really envisioned myself like eating tofurkey dogs all day. I'm like, what do vegans even eat?
Right.
So, and I really did. I ate a lot of cheese and eggs, and I have, some allergies and things like that too, that kind of were restrictive. Like, I can't eat beans. So really, I saw veganism as completely unattainable. And then I watched Cowspiracy, and that's what kind of first started the wheels turning in my mind. And at the time, when I went vegan, I was living in London, Ontario. And Windsor's really caught up pretty fast to London and Toronto in the last, I want to say, year. But really before that, Windsor's vegan options weren't, as, I guess, extensive as in some bigger cities. So like in London, they had, more vegan comfort food. They had donuts. They had a fully vegan cupcake shop. They had, just so many more options. Even when you go out to eat at like a non-vegan restaurant in London, there were more options. And Windsor hadn't really caught up to that. If you went anywhere and you asked them what's vegan, you'd most likely have a salad that was really like dressed down. Like, you could have the salad, but you could have the salad without cheese, without the egg, without the dressing. So then really you just had lettuce. So Windsor at the time really hadn't caught up. But then when I was living in London, there were all of these options. And then I don't know if it was the chicken or the egg, or maybe that's not the right analogy given we're talking about veganism, but I don't know what started it, but the community of veganism in London was huge too. So I'm not sure if it was just that, the community was big and then the options sort of grew because of the need. Potentially that was it. But I found that when I was in university, so I did my master's in London, the vegan community was huge on campus. And campuses are a place like that, right? Where there's, more of a hub for, out of the box thinking. Young people are willing to try new things. So I met a lot of vegans. And so I just it fell into my lap. I just thought, okay, I'm going to explore this more, because now that I'm seeing all these people that are vegan and living their lives pretty normally and able to eat these, like cheesy pizza and, tofu scramble that tastes like eggs, I kind of had the idea of, okay, maybe this is more possible than I thought. So I watched Cowspiracy, and that's really more focused on like the environmental aspects of veganism. And I distinctly remember like 5 years ago, there was a line, and it was an old farmer. I think it was a farmer anyways. And he used to have a dairy farm, I think. And he said, you can't call yourself an environmentalist if you're not vegan. And I heard that, and I was like a little shaken by it, because I, at the time, was vegetarian. And I just sort of thought, okay, well, what does that mean for me and who I want to see myself as, and the kind of person that I want to be, and the kind of impact that I want to have on the world? Hearing that, and hearing like a farmer that, used to own a dairy farm, this is all, I think it's just paraphrasing from what I heard. I don't remember it too well, because it's been a number of years, but hearing that and realizing that the dairy industry and the meat industry have such a huge impact on the environment, but specifically dairy, right? Because there's so much cattle, and then we're clearing rainforests and clearing so much land in the world, like really precious land, in order to have more cows grazing. So I didn't make the connection in my head, I guess, that it's not just meat that is like causing the deforestation and the farming for animals, it's dairy too. So then when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, well, I have to do something. And I wouldn't recommend anyone going like quote unquote cold turkey and just kind of like throwing away everything in their fridge, because I think that kind of a transition is really difficult. And I think in some ways you might be setting yourself up for, at the very least, a tough transition, at the most failure, and potentially, not treating your body well if you're not taking it slowly. But I literally gave away all my cheese to my roommate. I threw away, whatever snacks she didn't want, and, gave her my eggs and whatever else in the fridge that I had. I said, here, take these. Like, I don't want these egg whites. I don't want this block of Parmesan. Like, you can have it. I'm going vegan right now. So I did it. And then it's been 5 years now. So again, like I said, I wouldn't necessarily recommend like doing that overnight, but that's what I did.
Yeah, but I mean, it worked for you, though.
It worked for me.
So you could recommend it.
For sure. Yeah.
Because, everyone, one thing I did, I just came to this like awareness the other day. Today, actually, I was watching I was riding my bike in the morning this morning, and I was watching this Gary Vee video, and I'm looking at his office, and it's like the messiest office I've ever seen. Like, you got shit everywhere, right? And in this video that I was watching. And I was like, I could never work in that environment. But that I think that's just the key. Is like, for some people, going cold turkey is what works. For some people, there's a transition, and
right.
so I always just speak from what I know, and from what you know is cold turkey. And I've gone cold turkey on a lot of things, and I've had a lot of success with it. So sometimes I think cold turkey is what people need, because it's like this is a commitment. It's an intention.
You're right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see the value in that intention 100%. And like, I think also for me, the transition was easy in a lot of ways because I was already vegetarian. So there were a lot of things I was already eating, the Eve's, vegetarian pepperoni or the vegan pepperoni, right? And I it's not like I was a stranger to vegan cheese, because being vegetarian, you already go out to eat at those restaurants. Yes. So, but you're right. I think there is some value in just making that intention and saying, you know what, beyond this day, like, I'm making this decision and I'm sticking to it. And then it gives you a goal to work towards, rather than just kind of saying like, oh, maybe in 6 months I might do this if I feel like it, right? Yeah,
for sure. And for me, like, the way it works for me is I'm kind of like an all or nothing kind of person. Yeah. And like, if I say I'm going to slowly transition, like if I eat one, I think cannoli, because my wife's family's Italian, and her Nona makes these amazing cannolis, and I'm like, if I'm going vegan but I eat one cannoli, then it just sends me back down the spiral of oh well, since I did that, I might as well order a pizza or whatever it is, So for me, cold turkey works. But I think it's interesting. I think this one thing that comes out of this conversation is that everybody's different, right? So you just got to find the path that works for you, and not just talking about veganism, talking about any change. It's like there might be different situations for every single person. So yeah, let's transition now. So you've kind of discovered this passion and this connection, and I liked the fact that you talked about different motivations about becoming vegan, right? Like, I went veg in 2005, so 15 years ago, which is nuts, right? And when I went veg, there was nobody that was vegetarian. There was nobody, like I remember I posted on Instagram recently when I went to like Veg Fest or whatever, and there was like, it's like hundreds of people and it's packed, and I was going like, Jesus, I'm like 15 years ago, like you couldn't get a bean burrito at Taco Bell, and now it's like, so it's great that the movement has, because there's so much good that comes out of it, environmental, health benefits, but also just the one thing that I really connect to is that, I don't believe that I deserve the right to take the life of any other living being. Like I don't even kill centipedes in my house, which is like
I pick up spiders with a little piece of paper and I let them outside. Because I mean, what right do I have?
Exactly.
They're just living their lives, and they just happen to be smaller and in a space that I'm not used to having them, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a right to live. Definitely.
And the one thing that I want to talk about killing insects here for a little bit longer, which was kind of a funny topic, but the one thing I remember, I watched this documentary once. It was called The Transcendent Man, I think. I hope that's the right name of the documentary. But it's about this guy who basically believes he's going to live forever, and he's like vegan, hardcore. He takes all these vitamins. He does all these workouts, and like he thinks he's going to live forever because he believes that AI is going to advance technology so fast that eventually, like, we're going to have bionic hearts and whatever, and we're going to be able to live for 500 years or something along these lines. So he's like making sure that he lasts long enough until the guy's a little bit out there, but so he lasts long enough to make sure he benefits from all this technology, right? And you're going like, where is this conversation going? But anyways, the one thing he said to me, which was really interesting, he says there might be a point where AI is so far ahead of us intellectually that AI will look at us like mosquitoes, right? So like if a mosquito bites you and you slap that mosquito, just because we're so far, more advanced than a mosquito, we don't think anything out about taking that life. But imagine us being the mosquito, right? Oh my God. Yeah, and it like completely, like when I had that awareness, I was like, oh my God. That
blows my mind.
Yeah, right. And that was that one line, right? That one thing from that movie that really stuck out. As weird as the guy was, and like it was just that one thing, and I was like, oh my God. So that really opened my eyes, because I was kind of like a half-ass vegetarian, I think, for a long time. I tried to make this transition to vegan multiple times. It hasn't worked for me, but I'm there. I'm open. I'm ready. I'm like, I'm on the door. I'm on the doorstep. Like Bree's like always kind of like, let's go, let's do it. And we're back and forth. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
One day. But so when I'm thinking about this, then I started thinking about the bugs that are in my house, right? And I know, like, it's just interesting how disconnected people get from how precious a life is.
Yeah. Any life is precious.
100%. And it's like when you have that awareness, or that it turns you into a different person.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like and it begins to attract to you the type of people that you want to be around that have that same type of mentality, right? It's like, you and I have met multiple times, but like we there's a connection between us, and like we vibe well, right? So it's like, it's because we're connected to like a similar purpose. So the comedy of like catching these bugs which is hilarious, is like, for some reason my house is like Centipedeville, so like I'm like constantly catching centipedes, and like my strategy to catch a centipede is like, I put a cup over it, and then I slide a piece of paper under the cup, and then I let him outside.
Yeah.
I've actually started to get a little bit extreme with this, and I was like, because I don't want to throw them outside in the winter, right? Because I'm like, they're going to die anyways, right? I know that they're just probably getting back in my house really quickly, but I was like, maybe I'm just going to get like an aquarium.
Oh my God.
And I'm going to start storing all of these bugs in the aquarium, and in the summer I'm going to let them out. But I'm like, okay, I'm going too extreme now.
That's hilarious. I can just see it though. Like what is Dave doing?
Yeah.
Like, it's just my centipede aquarium. Like, don't ask questions.
Yeah, exactly. But it's crazy that, and I know that like the meat eaters and everything are listening to this podcast going like, what the fuck? Like basically, but it's funny. It's just like, I didn't go vegetarian originally for the animals, right? I went vegetarian because I saw the health benefits. Like that's where I was the first. And there's multiple levels of this. There's health, there's environmental, and then there's the life. But as I went further down the road of vegetarianism, I started to just become more compassionate, and like, this is what we've gotten so far away from is compassion, and like my whole entire business model is based around compassion for other people. Like I just want to help as many people as I possibly can. Right. So when you have that as your motivation, like how much more powerful is that than making money or getting into shape or looking good for girls or, whatever, looking good on social media. It's like, man, when you have compassion, you truly want to help people. You want to fill a void. I mean, there's so much more power behind that.
100%.
You can just feel it, right? So yeah, let's get off bug capturing. So let's talk about Plant Joy Donuts. You're killing it over there. Like,
thank you.
The donuts are absolutely amazing. Vegans, non-vegans, everyone's eating them. You're introducing more people to what's actually possible. I think like one of the biggest things that you did there was that you just thought outside the box. We get so trapped in like, especially now because this information's at our fingertips, right? So people think, oh, I want to start a business. And the first thing they do is they Google. It's like you can't Google a creative idea, right?
No, so, you're right. And I never thought about it like that. But yeah, it's I think sometimes it's something that just comes to you, and for me that's what it was. I mean, I started out making chocolates, like cream eggs and peanut butter cups that were vegan as well. Because again, I think if you're coming from a place of like, what can I provide? What can I give? I realized like that it was something that I was looking for. So it must be something that at least one other person was looking for, which was like, on Easter, having a treat that was more than just, an 80% dark chocolate. Right. Because really, when you think about chocolates like that are available, I mean, it's again, in the last year or so, it's changed a lot and what's available. And we have, places that are now importing products from Europe, which was a little more ahead of Canada. And so now those are available in Canada. So now our options are a little bit, broader. But, 2 years ago when I started my business, if a kid wanted to wake up on Easter morning and have a Cadbury cream egg, but they couldn't have dairy, their options were basically zero. Right. And, especially for little kids, and for me too, I wasn't a little kid, but I wanted, sugary chocolate on Easter morning. I wanted what I remember my childhood being like. So that's where I started from. And then somewhere, in the first 2 months of my business, I realized, okay, what else am I craving? What else can I do? Because once you kind of open up the possibilities for one thing for yourself, you kind of realize like, okay, well, I created this. I did this. I started something. What else is there? What else can I do? What else can I provide? And I realized Windsor doesn't have a donut shop, period. Windsor has a couple bakeries that make donuts. Right. But Windsor does not have a donut shop, let alone anywhere that offers vegan donuts. So then, for me, that was like, okay, that's the ultimate. That's what I need. That's what I truly needed. I realized, I love cake and cupcakes and cookies, and that's been done in Windsor for a little while, and there are vegan options, but nobody was making donuts, and nobody was making like real yeast-risen, fluffy donuts. Yeah. Like cake donuts, sure, but I don't really consider that a donut. That's more like a cupcake with a hole in it. Yeah. I was looking for real donuts. So then once it took a lot of trial and error. I mean, the first one that I made looked like an onion ring. Like it was ugly as all hell. Like it was, but then, you practice. And that's the thing. I think people look into starting a business thinking that they're going to go into it with the most gusto and confidence and they're going to know how to do everything right from the get-go. No, I didn't know how to do anything. I just figured it out. Right. And then I took feedback and then I grew from that feedback and I figured more stuff out until, I got here. Yeah, right. And like, let's talk about like, I'm sure as you went down this road where you're starting to create recipes and I'm sure that you had moments of like, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing here. Oh my God. I still have those moments. Yeah. Isn't that great though? It is great. And I think a lot of like, there's just not enough conversation happening around the roadblocks. It's like, everybody gets hyped in the beginning. Like, oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know how many business concepts I've had where I'm like, oh, I'm all in and I'm 100 hours a week going crazy. And then all of a sudden I get one bad, review or I hit one roadblock and it all comes crumbling down. Yeah. All the energy, the wind's taken out of your sails. But one thing I've been talking about lately is that when you're really, truly connected to your passion and the motivation is right,
that's what's going to help you to move through that. If the motivation is money or the motivation is power or wanting to impress other people, when that wind comes out of your sails, it's not coming back. So when you're truly passionate, it's like, okay, this was a roadblock. Let's regroup and go forward. So maybe just talk a little bit of some of the roadblocks that you hit along the way.
100%. Yeah. I mean, we could do a whole podcast. We could do 3 podcasts on all the challenges and roadblocks. I mean, and not to say that in a negative way, but just in all honesty, like starting a business comes with a ton of challenges and then some that you don't even realize that you're going to encounter. So you think about the basics of like, okay, you might need a business plan. I didn't have one. Eventually you'll need to get all the basics of, for sure for starting a food business, you need to start out with, getting your food handler certificate, getting all the certification that you need, making sure that you're in a certified kitchen. So that was my first step. And so we talked about that a little bit. Yeah. So when I was first looking for a certified kitchen, I actually talked with you. You were one of the first people that I looked into renting from Treehouse. Yeah. And then I ended up finding another kitchen along the way, and I didn't end up going with Treehouse. But then the kitchen that I was renting, and then somewhere along, I think it was around Father's Day weekend. Somewhere around that time of year, their rental agreement with the kitchen changed. So they were leasing, and then I was basically subleasing. Okay. So their rental agreement changed, and I had to move. I'm not kidding you, 500 pounds of supplies. Like I had a couple 100-pound bags. I had multiple. I had equipment. I had all of my stainless steel, my whisks and stuff like that. Glass bottles. I had to move that stuff the night before Father's Day weekend in order to make, and then I ended up moving to another kitchen, which is where I stayed for a year, which is Littlefoot Foods. Okay. So, but just finding a kitchen, period, was such a huge challenge. And then, even when you found a kitchen, and so one of the reasons that I didn't end up going with Treehouse is just because, you guys use it most of the time. And I would have had to just lug my equipment back and forth, like all of my stuff. So I had it in a rolling cooler. And that for me was a big challenge because to make donuts, you need a lot of ingredients. You need some cold, some room temperature. And it was heavy. So I ended up finding a place that I could, I had a small storage area. So that worked better for me. But oh my goodness, I mean, starting out, just having to find the space to, and then you need, for donuts specifically, you don't just need an oven and a small table to mix batter. Like you need multiple stainless steel tables to roll out dough and then cut the dough and then proof the dough and then fry it. So, thank God for Littlefoot, for, renting me their kitchen, for a whole year, because the space that they had, I mean, it was exactly what I needed to start out. But at the same time, because they, again, were using their kitchen during working hours, I would be using their kitchen in the middle of the night. So I would go in usually around 11 p.m., between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. is when I would start making them. Yeah. And I would finish somewhere around 8 to 10 a.m. I mean, give or take. And they were really generous with their time. Some days it was I had to be out of there by 8 o'clock, but I, would still be tidying stuff up in the back corner, just trying to, get everything frosted for when we were going to be opening and selling them. And they were really accommodating. But I mean, I worked, midnights for a year, and not just you clock in and clock out midnights, where you have an 8-hour shift and when it's done, it's done. Right. It's when you're the sole proprietor, the only person running that business and the only person making the donuts, there's no end time. The end time is when you finish making the donuts and you have them ready to sell. Right. So it's 12-hour shifts, it's 14-hour shifts. It's sometimes you don't sleep that day because you have to make the donuts and then bring them to a market, sell the donuts, and then maybe there's another market the next day. Well, you got to go back to the kitchen at 11 p.m., start again, and bring them to the next market. So I mean, 35-hour shifts. It's and so then in between there, I would take a little solace and nap in my car because I didn't have the time to drive home to actually sleep, Yeah. But again, I mean, people don't see everything that it takes to build something. They just kind of see the end product, which is oh, it looks great. People are excited about it,
Yeah. So what do you think kept you going? That working like crazy. I mean, you're just talking to me. I'm tired thinking about that.
I know.
So it's like what do you think kept you going? Like,
I think honestly, it's like something that you mentioned, previously today is that when you have that something more pure and something like that real true passion in your heart driving you, like really like actually, sorry, I just hit the microphone, but like actually in your heart, like you have to really feel that for not only like for serving people, for serving the community, for providing something that doesn't exist and that never existed and that now does exist that people need. So, I mean, of course there were nights like where I would go, okay, my pop-up is tomorrow on a Tuesday and is it really going to be busy on that Tuesday? I don't know. Are people going to get them? I could just take the day. I could just say, no donuts this Tuesday. Yeah. You know how many conversations I had like that in my head? Yeah. It's not that it doesn't happen. It's not that you don't have those moments where you say, I could just take the day off. I could just give this whole thing up. I could just go I have a master's. I could just go find a stable, normal job at a university. But there were so many moments where I would meet somebody at a pop-up and they would say, oh my God, I can't believe this never existed before. Yeah. This is the most amazing donut I've ever had. Or people would say, I'm not even vegan, but I prefer these to any other donuts that I've had. You have moments that fuel you and that remind you that you created something that never was there before, and that if you stop, then that thing ceases to exist. Yeah. And providing value to the community really, really, really kept me going, because of course there are moments where you kind of think, yeah, sure, I could take the day off, and I'm sure that everything would be fine, but I didn't. Mm-hmm. I didn't.
Were you when you first started out, were you like working a job as well, or where were you like how did that transition happen from creating the business and actually starting to make money that it was going to support you? Yeah.
So it's funny that you mentioned that. So I had after my master's just gotten a retail job, just selling barbecues. I won't say where. I mean, it was a great place. But and it wasn't really something I was really passionate about, especially being vegan. Kind of hard to sell barbecues.
Yeah, right.
And I ended up, I gave my 2 weeks notice long before I was ready. So I had zero savings. I was not in any place to be starting a business. Starting out, there were more times than I can count that like whatever money I made from a pop-up, I spent all of it on ingredients for the next pop-up. Yeah. And I had to be really creative with my money. I had to be really, there were so many pop-ups and markets and, I said yes to some wholesale and some other orders because I couldn't pay my rent at my apartment. And I was like, it's difficult growing from a place where you're a little bit desperate to just kind of keep going. Yes. So in hindsight, there were so many like mistakes that I made where, I stretched myself too thin. I said yes to too many things because I was struggling to keep going. Yeah. And yes, I do think that having that, side job for longer would have helped me. But I think when I started my business, I was in such a place of like just pure passion and drive that I needed that time to grow it. Yeah. Like I really realized that, even when I was at my other job, that it was like consuming my mind, and I would be thinking about the Squarespace website layout, and I would be thinking about, how to market the next orders, and, what kind of graphic I wanted to post on social media, and what's the next flavor going to be. And I couldn't focus on anything else. And I thought, well, that's not really fair to these people that are paying me to, help them with their business, when I'm not fully there, I'm not present. So was I ready to quit? Absolutely not. Yeah. No, not at all. But I did it. And I think it's just, sometimes you just got to take the crazy step. And I remember seeing a quote on, there's a business called Wolf and Rebel. They make like little keychains, and it said scared shitless, but doing it anyway. Yeah. That was my 2018, part of 2019 was just, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing, but I'm going to do it.
And I think that's important for people to hear, because a lot of people are like waiting for everything to fall perfectly into place, and like they want to make sure that, one of the things that I laugh about when people come to me and they want to start a business is like, well, I need to get the website, I need to get this, I need to get business cards. And I'm just like, no, you need to start, right? You just need to go out and figure out how to get that first sale, and then once you have that, then start worrying about all the other stuff. But like, don't try and build $1 billion app before you've sold one donut, basically. Like you gotta do the work in the early stages. And I even still get stuck in this mentality. Like, I'm hosting workshops and retreats, and I'm like trying to create a model of where I can sell these online and how I can create ads and all this stuff. But it's like, really, like the retreat I'm going to be hosting in June, it's going to be 20 people, right? It's like, I could probably individually message people that I know that are already interested in this that would come and sell it. But here I'm trying to build this app to attract 100 people so I can get 2 people from a webinar. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? It's like, you got to start, at ground zero kind of,
And then that you mentioned that too, those 20 people, if you really put your heart and your focus into those 20 people, those 20 people are going to leave in June and say, this was the most transformative experience of my life. You got to meet this guy. You got to follow this guy. And that's, I think, how I grew was, I would go to one pop-up, let's say even if it was one pop-up a month, I think it ended up growing from there. But even if it was one a month, that seems like, it's not a lot of, getting out there in the community. But when you're standing there for, let's say 4 hours at this pop-up, every single person at the pop-up, I looked in the eye, I said hello to, I shook their hand, I introduced myself, I learned their name. I asked them why they were interested in this. I asked them what they would be interested in the future. What flavors are you excited about? Why did you go vegan? Or why are you trying to go vegan? Or have you ever tried vegan food? And let's say I had, even if there was in those 4 hours, even if there was 10 customers, that's 10 people who are now going to say, I met this girl and she started something really cool. And, she's only 25 and they were vegan, but they didn't taste vegan. And that one person saying that one positive thing about you has a ripple effect.
Yes.
So I really realized, like, just being myself and just showing people my heart and saying, here's what I made. Do you like it?
Yeah.
What do you want? What else do you want? What can I do for you? How can I serve you? Really kind of helped me grow something from nothing.
Yeah, and I think the one thing too that we have to touch upon is that you didn't do this because you were trying to get. Like you weren't talking to these people, looking them in the eye, asking them about veganism because you're trying to get more sales. That's who you naturally are, right? And it's like I'm sure that's the reason that your business has grown. And it kind of circles back to this compassion that we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast. Was like, when you truly care about people and you truly have compassion, people see right through that bullshit, right? Like when you're trying to, create another sale, like they see right through it. It's like, if you truly care about, the product that you're putting out, and it's like that organic growth is going to happen naturally. And you hit the nail on the head with, this is like a really amazing insight. And I think this is what a lot of people are missing, because, right now we're in the world of like, you have to grow your Instagram following, you have to grow your social media following, which it is true. It's like, I believe that if you're not on, these platforms and you're not creating attention in 10 years time, people aren't going to know who you are, right? It's because like where everything's going. So it is important, but everyone's trying to get 10,000 followers before they get one. And when I say it's one, I mean one follower that is like going to be your ambassador. That's going to be like, you have to go to Plant Joy Donuts. These are amazing. And they're going to probably tell 10 people. But even if you just had one and they told one other person, and now you have 2 and 2 people are telling 2 people, and it's like, it's going to grow quick, right? But we're all focused on the end number, and people get stuck in shortcuts. And I'm speaking from experience here, because I did the same thing, and then I got taken away from like just providing real value to people, right? And so, like you did that like really naturally, right? It was like, so what was it? Like, what was the difference in you? Is this who you are? You're just so authentic? Is that what it is?
You know what? I think when you're growing something out of, it started from my own need. It started from, I really want donuts and nobody's doing it. And I thought, why not? Yeah. And I kind of, I had gone through 7 years of schooling because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And that kind of shattered for me when I really thought about, do I really, really want this? And I kind of realized I don't know what I actually want. And so I was like, a few years before starting my business, like I was really spiraling, like, I don't know what I want from this life. I don't think I want to be a doctor, but I just did 7 years of schooling and now I have a master's degree, but I'm exhausted because I just did 7 years of schooling trying to be a doctor. Oh. I was exhausted. And then I just got, a minimum wage retail job because I just needed to not think for a little while about the brain and school and about everything and my higher purpose. I just was selling barbecues,
Right.
And I think just from a place of like, I put myself in a place of sort of complacency for a little while of like, I'm just going to do the bare minimum in my life and I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this. And I think from that place of like, okay, now I've had my little break and now I need something to really fuel me. Like I need something to live for, like a purpose, something to grow from, something to create for people. Because I think when you, especially growing up as a kid, like everyone just told me, oh, you're smart and you're good with people. This is the perfect profession for you. Like you're good at science and you like people. That's what a doctor is. Yeah, right. And I don't think I ever really gave myself the time to think about what do I actually want to do and what do I want to create. So I think once I started giving myself the opportunity to be bold and to create just from a place of like, let's see what the hell I can do. Like, then I just was so excited by that. And then people resonated with that and with me. And I think especially when you're coming from a place of, like you said, authenticity of like, I want people to eat more vegan food, but I want it to be enjoyable. I don't want to force feed people kale.
Yeah, right.
It's like you can eat a donut. It just happens to be vegan, Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a lot there. One is just to have the self-awareness to just take that step back and be like, is this really what I want to do? Like, it's so easy to get put into a box, It's like, oh, I'm going to become a doctor. And like you go through all of these steps, and especially for you, because I think this is really big. It's like, if you went to school for 7 years to become a doctor and you made this shift, like, said, no, I'm going to go do this, right? It's like so many people will just get, and this happened to me too. I'm not saying, I shouldn't say so many people. It happened to me. It's like, I'll get so attached to an idea, right? And let's say it's a business concept, right? And I'll give you an actual real world example. Like Rise Up Rich, this podcast is called Rise Up Rich. And I have a whole entire another business concept around Rise Up Rich that one day I may still launch. But when I really started digging in, I had done a lot of work, like probably 2 months of work on this concept, on the website, on the app. It's like it's this whole thing, right? It's this big animal. Rise Up Rich is really what it was supposed to be. And then in one moment, I'm like, is this really what I want to be putting out, right? And I just shifted gears, But so many people, including myself, would be really adverse to making that decision because they've invested so much time. And I mean, I was only 2 months and I was like, do I really want to ditch this idea? But it's like, here's the thing. You can. Like tomorrow, if I wanted to turn Treehouse into a vegan restaurant, I could, like, it's just like, we just get so attached because we spent so much time, but it's like, you can make a shift at any single time that you want. And you know what? No one's going to care. It's like, as long as you have that passion and that energy, it's like energy is more important than anything. And it's like, if you are moving down a road, no matter how much time you put into it and the energy is no longer there, then that should be a cue for you to be like, what's happening here? Like, I'm not really truly connected to this anymore. And that's kind of like what happened to me in the restaurant business is, even though Treehouse is still, I still obviously still 100% own Treehouse. And, I've owned it for 20 years. So it's like my baby. But, my energy isn't in the restaurant business anymore. That's why I hired like a manager, and I'm paying him really well because he has the energy that I once had for that business. My energy now is in this, and coaching and teaching and workshops. So I just shifted, and now that I have the energy, it's like I can work for 20 hours, right? Doing this stuff. And that's, I think, what is super important. And I think there's very few people that are taking the time to actually really truly ask the question and get out of all of the programs and all the beliefs, right? Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a minister because my mom was a minister, right? And I'm like, I want to do what, and so now it's kind of funny that in some ways, I'm not in a church, but speaking and being in front of people and, taking on the role that a minister would take in the community of helping people with their problems is essentially what I want to do. But I got so far away from that as a kid. Like, I knew as a kid what my purpose was, right? But I got so far away because I had to make money. I had to do this.
Yeah.
These things happened to me that made me say, "Oh, money is going to solve my problem." So I began to become more entrepreneurial and all these kinds of things. So it's like, it's about taking that step back and being like, what is it that I really want to do?
Yeah.
Man, there's very few people that are asking that question.
Yeah. 100%. And when you mentioned that too, now I realize, looking back, that there were definitely signs. I can't pinpoint exactly like when I was a kid, but growing up, that I liked cooking and baking, and that especially growing up, I liked creating things with my hands, like crafts. For all of my birthdays and Christmas presents from the Sears catalog, I would get like all the jewelry making kits, the soap making, because I really liked the idea of creating something beautiful and something exciting and creating it with my hands and saying I made this. And then in my undergraduate degree at the University of Windsor, we held so many bake sales, and that's what got me through so much of the really hard parts of my degree. Would be like, okay, well, sure, I have 3 midterms and an exam coming up, but we have this bake sale and we're going to raise money for, the John McGivney Children's Center. And we would raise like thousands of dollars. And, we made a periodic table of cupcakes, and we did really fun stuff. Yeah. And that taught me not only baking and making something really pretty, like piping design. Like I would buy all these pretty piping tips and to make different designs and flower shapes. And, I would, but then also marketing, to tell people, hey, we're having a bake sale. Here's what it is. You should come to it. You should buy these cupcakes so we can raise money. Like all of that really came into play when I was, 20, 21. So that, when I was 25 and starting a business, I already had a lot of those skills. I didn't even realize that I had spent years developing, right? And I think it just stems from, like you said, you get caught up, like you inherently kind of know what it is you really love to do and what your purpose is, but then you get caught up with like, oh, well, I can't do that because I have to make money. Like I chose being a doctor because I thought I get to help people. It's a legitimate job to make money and to help people at the same time. Like, you're going to be a doctor. You have an official title. Of course, the title was attractive too, especially as a kid. And when you're a little girl and you're like, I want to be a doctor. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Good for you. What a smart little girl you are, right? So of course it's so much of the external validation too, right? But so much of it just comes back to like this is what I really love to do. But then I think, like you mentioned earlier too, you have to keep the energy in it. And I realized, 2 years of working, between 12 and 24 and even more hour shifts, burnout is a real thing.
Yes.
And I think I've experienced that multiple times. And so at this point in our growth, like I'm really putting a lot of my energy into nurturing my team and kind of trying to help them grow in the skills that they need. Because as much as, when you're starting out and you've got all this energy and excitement and you're building and growing, you can push through those 25-hour, 26, 35-hour shifts. Like, eventually you can't and you shouldn't. Eventually, 100%. Like, you can't be growing at that rate because you're going to crash and burn, and then where goes the business, yes, right? Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to really realize now is how to take better care of me so that this can continue to grow and thrive, right?
Yeah, and I think, and one of the things I was going to ask you is like what's a challenge that you're having in your business, and how can I help you? And I think you basically just said it right there. And we talked a little bit about this at the workshop we did at St. Clair, but 100% that burnout is real. I just did an Instagram post where you have to, where it's called invest and rest. It's like,
yes.
And when I say invest, I mean, I'm going to, in 8 days, my wife and I are going away for a month to Florida, where we just amazing. Well, I'm still going to work, but like maybe 2 hours a day, not, 10 hours a day. Right. So, cause you need that recharge. And if you continue to go at the level you're going, you're going to start to hate your passion, right? So this would be the advice if you were my coaching client. This is the advice I would give you, is that you need to determine what are the things that you love about your business, that you love doing, because businesses aren't just you said it in the beginning. It's like we only see the end result, right? But there's 100 moving parts in businesses, right? And there's things that you might love doing in your business, and there's things that you might hate doing, right? So for me, I think this is what a lot of people are missing when it comes to real business. And the thing is, well, I'm just going to say it and then I'm going to describe it. So what it is that delegation, okay? We've heard the word delegation a million times, and I really struggled with whether I was going to release this or not, but this is it. This is the critical factor to achieving real success, is that find out what it is that you want to do, and then anything that you don't want to do, you delegate or you automate, right? So you can't do that though until you've built. You need to understand every single aspect of the business. And once you do that, then you can go to delegate and automate. But if you don't understand it fully, then it's hard to explain to someone or train someone on how to do it, right? So you're already starting to get there because you mentioned leadership, right? And this is where the delegation process comes from. Like if you watch a CEO at his highest level, my uncle, for example, he used to be the plant manager at Chrysler, the Windsor Chrysler. He had 5,000 employees that worked underneath him. And I said, what did you do all day long? Right? And he said, all I did was talk. And I said, oh, exactly, right? He wasn't creating websites or creating procedures or doing whatever. He had an assistant that was, he would just say, this is what I want to put into place. They would create the policies and procedures. He would review it, make the tweaks. Like he didn't do anything besides what he was amazing at, which was he was a people person, right? He had the ability to tell people like it is, like say, you guys are doing this wrong, right? And he wouldn't sugarcoat it, but he wouldn't be rude about it, but he's just like, this is the way it is. That was where his strengths were, right? So all he did was focus on his strengths. And because of that, he was able to wake up every day at 4 a.m, and come home every night at 8 p.m. because he loved what he did. Now, where you lose that love and that passion is when you start doing a bunch of things that you hate, right? When you start having to do the accounting or start building the website or start shooting the videos for social media if you don't like video editing and all. But if you learn to figure out, there should be about 3 things that you love doing in your business, only focus on those 3 things. Every single other piece of the business is who can I give this to or how can I automate it, right? And that's for me. For me now, this is my focus is well, it has to be about leadership, right? And for me, that's kind of what my business is like I'm trying to create leaders in every single person that follows my content. It's like, how can I help you improve your life so that you can become a leader to somebody else? So really focusing on leadership, especially in the bars, like how can I give my general manager the leadership he needs to be a good leader to all my employees, okay? So the second is I want to be just coaching people, and producing content and speaking and doing workshops and retreats. Like that's what I want to be doing, speaking events. And then I want to be learning more because I want to constantly be delivering more value. So anything that is not in those 3 or 4 things, I'm pushing to other people, right? That is when the energy can go forever and ever and you don't get that burnout. Like you still have to have rest, obviously, but you can just go forever. When you start doing the things that you hate, that's when the burnout starts to come into play. And when you start being like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go into work today. So that's would be the advice I would give you is like work to delegate, where to build the leaders, where to recognize the people that can become your next manager. Is like if you're having to work 20 hours a week, it's like you need to hire more people or you need to delegate that responsibility or bring your employees in to work longer. Like I have a friend of mine, Fluff Pet Care.
Yeah.
Right. Laura. Yeah. So she's started this little tiny business making animal, vegan friendly animal tags, leashes, all kinds of stuff. It's awesome stuff. And she's like, I'm killing myself. I'm working like 10 hours a night packaging all this stuff because it's all online. She has to ship out, like make the stuff.
Because she has a huge Etsy following.
Yeah, huge. Right. So she has to make all that stuff. And I said, you need to hire people. Right. It's like the big thing that will happen in business is that you make this transition to your passion becomes like this pain in the ass, and that's the last thing that we want, right? So.
Right, and we don't, and that's the thing that I've been learning, and it's just, and owning a business is just a constant learning process, and just constantly, every day, every month, every year, shedding different parts of you that no longer serve you, and learning to just sort of, as much as it's uncomfortable, just try to be better, because it's not, when you think about, personal development or up-leveling yourself, like people look at it as like, going to seminars and rah, and like enjoy, and like some of it should be enjoyable. It should be like growth and learning, But a lot of it is just super uncomfortable because you have to like confront the parts of yourself that you don't really like very much. You have to look at parts of yourself that you don't look at and really stare at, parts of your soul that you don't really, that never really see the light, and look at them and go, okay, I see you.
Yeah.
I see your pain. I see where you have to grow and where you have to, stretch yourself a little bit to get to this next level that's going to be better, but getting there might be a little bit uncomfortable, right? And getting there, the pain in that, right?
100%. Like that. I mean, this is something I always say, that people say that personal growth and spirituality is like, it's not about like just posting gratitude quotes on Instagram. It's like, there is like some dirt. It's just like business, actually. It's like, you got to experience the dirt and the hardships and all the uncomfortability and the struggle before you kind of come out on the other side and be like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? And so all people are trying to say is like, oh, look at the amazing. Well, no, there's so much more. And same with spiritual growth. It's like, spiritual growth isn't just about flowers and roses and rainbows. It's like, it's about going to these places where you're facing like your shadow, and what the shadow is like, it's that place that we all have that we don't want anyone else to know about, right? And it's like learning how to face that until that shadow is something that we're completely comfortable with talking about in a podcast, that's going out to the entire world. Like, that's when you're free of it, right? So it's not all pretty, but it's also even though it is difficult, it's kind of like there's an enjoyment to it. It's like, because because what I know now is that if I go to those uncomfortable places, when I come out on the other side, I'm going to be 100 times better than I once was. Yeah. So now there's joy in it. In the beginning, maybe it wasn't so much like, I don't want to go there, right? So now there's a joy. Okay. This is like all, like we could literally do like 20 podcasts, you and I together. Like, there's just so much good stuff happening. But I like to kind of like end the podcast usually with like, if you had to, like, let's just like connect to like who's listening here. It's like, this is like, the people that are listening to this are people that want to grow spiritually. They want to grow personally. They probably are like entrepreneurial, especially because they want to know like your story. Like, they see all your success. They see the lines out the door, right? They want to know like, what is she doing? Like, how can I do that, right? So with that in mind, with the listener in mind, it's like, and I hate to put things into lists because it's like, it's so non-linear, but like, what do you think the biggest thing is? It's like, what was the biggest leap you had during this entire process?
Okay, so I would have to say the biggest leap. So it stemmed from getting the storefront, because I think once you have a physical location instead of just, sporadic pop-ups, things grew very quickly from there, and I did not expect. But from there, so I think the biggest leap that stemmed from that was hiring staff.
Yeah.
So I think, and I still see this in people who've had businesses for 10, 20, 50 years, that, it's very hard to let go of things that you think that you're the only one that can do those things. And I would challenge that, and I would say in maybe 99% of the cases, you're not the only one that can do that thing. And there are so many people whose skills can complement yours. It's not a threat to you or your authority or your skills or your talent. It's a complement to be able to to complement your skills and add to what you provide. And so that the sum, right, is greater than, or the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right?
And like, it's also, sorry to interrupt that, it's also, though, I think that it's not a threat. It's also not a threat to your business.
No.
Like, so many business owners get, like, I don't want to show them my secret recipe because then they're going to steal it and open up their own thing. They're so paranoid. Like, we become so paranoid as a society, right? It's like, no, like, just give people the opportunity and the responsibility, and they're going to step up, and they're probably going to step up. Like, there's like things that my employees are doing that I'm like, whoa, they're doing that way better than I once did. Right. So, but I have to give them the opportunity to do that. Yeah,
100%. So that was one of my biggest, leaps, my biggest growing moment. And it still is now realizing I'm not the only one that does this. I'm not the only one that can do this. How can I help these people to have a job that they love going to provide them with employment, to be able to better serve my customers? Now that I have a team we have 10 staff now and growing. And we're able to serve so many more customers than when we opened in May, and it was just me, and I was struggling, and I was I never stopped working, and I was crying every day because I couldn't physically keep up with the demand. Right. So this has been my biggest leap, is having staff. They're incredible people, and I'm so grateful to have them, and just trying to develop my own leadership skills to better serve them now.
Yeah.
So that we can all serve the customers.
100%. It's funny because like leadership has been so high on my radar lately, and you know, it's just kind of interesting how this conversation went. Like, this is what it's all about, and this is what I think a lot of business owners are missing, because, or people that want to start businesses, because we want to do everything on our own. Like, we want to do it all, but that is the quickest way to burn out. That's the quickest way to ensure that you never grow. Right? You know, it's like, if you don't have the ability to pass that responsibility along, it's like you're going to get stuck. You're going to be stuck in like the mom and pop mentality. It's like, we opened up a diner and mom and pop do everything. Pop's in the back cooking and mom's in the back serving, right? It's like, you know, it's like, you got to get out of that mentality if you want to scale. But if you don't want to scale, then, you know, yeah, do it and do what you love and keep serving the community, and you'll be busy for the rest of your life. So what's the next step for Plant Joy? Like, what do you see in the future of Plant Joy Donuts, you know, like 10 years down the road? Is it a franchise? What is it? You know what? And that's something that I've had to reevaluate with the very quick growth, having the storefront, and realizing that when I started that the way that I was going would not be able to serve the customers in the way that I wanted to. So I think I'm still reevaluating, you know, where we're going to be 5 and 10 years from now. But at the very least, in the next, you know, couple of years, we're going to need a bigger space. And that's kind of where I'm putting my energy now, is, you know, I'm, as much as I love where we're at right now. I love Old Riverside with all of my heart. And if I can stay in the neighborhood, I will. I know that in order to be able to serve people in the way that I envision serving people, we're going to need a bigger kitchen. You know, we started out in this tiny kitchen that used to be a fish and chips business. And fish and chips is take it out of the freezer, put it in the fryer, and serve it to the customer. You know, and that size of a kitchen is not meant for a full-scale bakery. Right. So that's our next step, and then where we're gonna go from there, you know, I don't even know yet. But I'm excited by that. I'm excited by there being, you know, completely open possibilities to where I could take this. Yeah, well, I think that you have all the elements for success. I think probably your self-awareness is probably going to be your greatest asset. You know, because that's what led you to where you are now, and just like being authentic and being your true self, because that's what people are drawn to. I love going into businesses where I love giving my money to people. You know, like there's nothing I wanted where I don't want to go into a business like, oh, they're taking my money. It's like, I want to give people my money. Like when I come to your business, it's like, I'm probably coming in for one donut, but I'm buying 6 or too many, you know, but it's like, and I feel good about the transaction. If you can make someone feel good about a transaction, like you've won, you know, and obviously that's proof from how busy you've become in such a short period of time. So it's all amazing stuff. We're probably gonna have to do a part 2 of this, I think. I would love that. For sure. I would love that. Thank you for coming on to the podcast. And if you guys haven't, Plant Joy Donuts, what's the address of there? 5622 Wyandotte Street East. Wyandotte Street East. And you guys are open 7 days a week, are you not? 5 right now, yeah. Okay. So we're closed Monday, Tuesday. Okay, good. Yeah. So what's like the busiest time when people are usually coming? The busiest time I would say is like Saturday between 11 and 1, okay, I think. Right. Like Saturdays are busy. Yeah. People are picking up for parties and things like that. Yeah. Yeah. If you haven't tried a Plant Joy donut, you definitely have to try. They're probably the best donuts I've ever had. So Thank you so much. Now I'm thinking about this. I'm getting hungry. I'm probably going to go get a Plant Joy donut. So thanks for coming on the podcast, and we'll do it again for sure. Thank you so much for having me. Awesome.